So essentially what I do is I just take the sponge and just start wiping it. Just like you would do with tile grout. And I try to use the flat part of the sponge rather than this round part, because the round part might dig in a little bit. So I want, the way I use my sponge, I want it to be consistent over the whole piece. So I figure this one's fairly dirty, so I'm going to leave it there. And then I kind of want to make sure my fingers are clean. Grab another sponge. So I'm going to go ahead and set it right here. I'm going to move this over a little bit. Like I said, I don't normally do it this way. Normally I'll just use a sink. But I'd rather have the bowls here. I mean, I could do the sink and edit it, but what a pain in the butt that'll be. So I'm just using the flat part of the sponge. I'm trying not to push it hard into the piece. Just want to clean that top edge off, just like tile grout. Go to another piece. When you get the brunt off, then you could kind of come in and clean it off one more time. The green that I'm wiping off will still leave kind of a residue of glaze on the brown. So it will affect it. And you know, I could have taken the time and not gotten anything on the brown, but I think it'll be a nice effect. So you want to really squeeze the water out. So you can see now how different it looks already from where the glaze is. Now a lot of the glaze that you see on the face is the way I mark. So while I'm glazing, I have specific marks that I put in to let me know that I finished a section, because it can get really confusing. You know, because I'm putting 3 coats on, and I don't want to put 4 coats on where I want to put, if I want 3 coats, I don't want 3 coats. So I'm really kind of crazy about cleanliness. I mean, when I'm glazing, I wear cotton gloves. And just because I don't want the oils from my hands affecting. I had a piece that I did years ago that the glaze essentially like peeled off after it was fired. And I just wonder if maybe some kind of oil or wax between the glaze body and the piece. I mean, it could be anything. That's the one thing that's kind of crazy about ceramics. I mean, if you're doing the same thing over and over, you know, you could kind of get an idea. But like some pieces that I just recently fired, I did it in a turquoise green. And what was funny about it is the turquoise never really showed up. I mean, it's green, and there's a chemical reaction that happens when you're firing like that. And there was a lot of black used on one of the pieces that I was firing. And truthfully, I think all the black glaze that I used affected how green the clay showed up on the surge. So I didn't really get the color that I was looking for. And I mean, plus it fired about 4 or 5 degrees higher than I normally would have. But by having these different bowls, I'm able to make sure the sponges are relatively clean. So, and that's sometimes why I don't like to do commissioned pieces of art. Because you can work on something for a few months, go and fire it, and it's like, okay, why did I get what I got? You know, I mean, because I do change things. And you know, when people say, well, you could do sample tiles. Well, a sample tile wouldn't exactly mimic as much of the black that I use that piece on. And plus I use two different types of black. I mean, there's a lot going on. And like I said, if I did the same color every time, and the only variation I had, and I do that color, that green color a lot, the only variation I had is I had a lot of black glaze. And what's funny about it is I do that color with a black glaze. But I've never done that color with that much black glaze. So it's just, it's a flip of the coin sometimes. Plus, one of my pieces recently, I have a hairline crack in it after it was glazed, and so I'm really frustrated about that. And I think I know the answer. I think I can glaze it heavier again and fire it again and see what happens. And if that doesn't work, I know this is considered sacrilegious in the ceramic world, but I'm going to paint it. And I've never used, what are they called? I've used acrylic paints on a piece before, but I'm thinking about using the kind of paint that they use on model cars, because I think it's harder and I think it's shinier, maybe less forgiving. But that's the one thing I do get a little frustrated about, is not quite having the control over color with ceramics. You know, and everybody's like, you know, there are a lot of purists that, and I think I'm kind of a purist, but I think there are a lot of purists that think it's sacrilege to paint a ceramic piece. But what's funny is I've done some research on it, and there's a really popular artist in California that all his ceramic pieces are painted with acrylic paint. I just have to laugh a little bit. But after I'm finished with this, I'll check the piece and make sure everything's glazed properly. And where maybe some glaze was missed, I'll glaze it again. But I'll wait till it's dry. So I think you get the idea of what I'm doing here.